Osmosis refers specifically to the diffusions of water down its concentration gradient. This is usually because any other molecule presents are too large to pass through the pore in the membrane. The force with which occurs is called the osmotic pressure. Imagine two solutions of a sugar separated by a semi-permeable membrane whose pores are too small to let the sugar molecules through. Osmosis refers specifically to the diffusions of water down its concentration gradient. This is usually because any other molecule present are too large to pass through the pore in the membrane. The force with which this occurs is called the osmotic pressure. The osmosis occurs until the equilibrium reached. The importance of careful control of solute concentrations in body fluids can be illustrated by looking at what happens to a cell. Like for example, in this picture, a red blood cell, when it is exposed to solutions that differ from the normal physiological conditions. Plasma osmolarity is maintained within a very narrow range because if the plasma water concentrations rise, for example, the plasma becomes more dilute than the intracellular fluid within the red blood cell, then the water will move down its concentration gradient across their membranes and into the red blood cells, and this may cause the red blood cell to swell and burst. In this situation, the plasma is said to be hypotonic. Conversely, if the plasma water concentrations falls so that the plasma becomes more concentrated than the intracellular fluid within the red blood cells, the plasma becomes hypertonic. Water passively moves by the osmosis from the blood cell into the plasma, and the blood cells will shrink. Facilitated diffusion. Large polar molecules, for example, the glucose, amino acids, and ions, cannot diffuse across the plasma membrane. So, it needs to be facilitated by transport protein. The transport protein can be either protein carrier or protein channels. This transport protein will help to move the molecules from high concentration to the lower concentrations across the plasma membrane. This diagram below pictures of the channel protein and also a carrier protein. This is the channel protein and this is the carrier protein. The carrier protein binds to a molecule and transports it across the membrane through a conformational shape. There are four main factors that can influence diffusion: the steepness of the concentration gradient, the temperature, the surface area, and the type of the molecule or the ion diffusing. For the steepness of the concentration gradient, the bigger difference between the two sides of the membrane, the quicker the rate of diffusion. High temperature will give the molecules more kinetic energy. Thus, the molecules will move around faster and indirectly makes the diffusions more faster. Surface area. The greater the surface area will make the diffusions faster. Large molecules need more energy to move, so they tend to diffuse more slowly. Like a non-polar oxygen molecule will diffuse more easily than the polar molecules because they are soluble in the non-polar phospholipid scale.